So are you ready for something dark? Are you sure? Okay, here are 19 reasons to read Revival Tractor. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave Musson, at Dave Musson on Instagram, and this is the place where I'm taking you through the works of Stephen King in chronological order and giving you 19 reasons to read each and every one of his books. And I throw out a few specials every now and then, also including my top 10 Stephen King books. If all that sounds like something you'd like more of, do click around, see what else you find, and hit subscribe if you like what you see so you don't miss any videos in the future. In this one, we're up to 2014 and King's novel Revival. Now this one is not for the faint-hearted. I'm going to give you 19 reasons to read this book, and I will cluster any spoilers towards the end and give you warning before they arrive, so if you need to dip out before then, you can do so. But otherwise, let's whip off the band-aid and get this done. 19 reasons to read Revival. Why didn't you tell me I hadn't put my glasses on? So this book takes quite a few twists and turns along the way, and really it's best to just go with it. We start in some idyllic small town in Maine in the 60s and then go through a bunch of weird horror, addiction, musings on love and opportunities lost, and some really dark shit too. This is also a book about death. If you are not ready to read a book about death, stay away from Revival. So Revival was hailed by a lot of long-time King fans as a return to form, mainly because of the book's final quarter, which I will touch on more after the spoilers jump. But, you know, I'm not buying the return to form thing, because that suggests that King was out of form, and you only need to look at his bibliography from 2000 onwards to know that that was a load of shit. So King has said that the inspiration for Revival came from a cross between Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Arthur Machen's The Great God Pan. Admit it, you're hooked, right? So what is the hook of this? Well, if I had to pick one word, that word would be electricity, but there's quite a lot more to it than just that. At the start, we meet young Jamie Morton and Charles Jacobs, the new minister in Jamie's hometown. Everybody loves the new minister. He, his son and his wife are instantly popular and instantly settle into the community. Charles also soon starts sharing his fascination with electricity with the local kids and gets them kind of invested as well. So Jamie's older brother ends up being in a skiing accident and loses the ability to speak, but Charles is able to cure him by using electricity. However, after Charles's wife and child are killed in a quite awful road accident, he completely unravels and is basically hounded out of town after delivering an atheist sermon from his church. So fast forward a few years and Jamie encounters Charles again, and he's still working with electricity. He's doing the revival circuit and making portraits out of electricity from people in the crowd. Jamie at this point is an addict and Charles cures him using electricity. You sticking with me? Told you there was lots of twists and turns. So again, we skip forward a few years and again the two main characters cross paths. This time because Jamie's childhood sweetheart is dying of cancer and Charles wants to cure her. And Charles is willing to cure her, provided that Jamie agrees to become his assistant for one final experiment. That final experiment is quite a scary one. So there are some quite stark Lovecraftian images scattered throughout this book, particularly images of giant ants. And the way in which King is able to throw these into a story that is so seeped in rose-tinted nostalgia and so full of heart is actually really damn impressive. They really do catch you out, but don't feel out of place, which is very well done. I really like Charles Jacobs as a character. His arc is great. He goes from this wholesome, young, hopeful guy to, well, quite the opposite. No hope, much older, and completely heartbroken and unravelled. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating to watch. As for Jamie, there's something very real about his story. It feels very human, particularly as he ponders about his own wasted potential. He could have made it as a great musician, but the drugs got the better of him, and he ended up settling with a job in some middle-of-the-road studio somewhere where he's basically an engineer and occasionally does some session work and often finds himself musing on what might have been. Like I said, it feels very human. So using electricity as a cure for all ailments sounds kind of dangerous, right? And King clearly thought so as well. Basically because all of the people that Charles cures have some very interesting after effects, which makes for some quite fantastic scenes in this book. So we get loads of heartwarming moments in this story, mainly the high points of Jamie's life, but there is always an undertone of menace and threat to the story. And I think that's why I've never been able to put it down once I've started reading it. It's gripping in a really dark way. So I mentioned the ending already, and I'll talk about it more after the spoiler jump, but it's worth another reason here because, wow, it really goes there. With Jamie in particular, you get a real sense of regret in Revival, and you have to wonder if King is channeling some of his own regrets onto the page there. After all, he lost quite a few years to addiction himself, and you have to wonder what he thinks about those years and what else he might have achieved, despite of everything else he's already done and gone on to do since in his epic career. So there's a random girl in this book wearing a t-shirt that says Metallica rules on it, and if you think I'm going to include that as a valid reason to read Revival, you would be absolutely right. Metallica fucking rules. So for King, this one was surprisingly subpar when it came to sales. It was outsold by Joyland, which feels surprising to say the very least. Okay, we're heading into spoiler territory, so if you don't want to know why the ending of Revival is such a big talking point, you should leave now. Okay, that final experiment then. Charles has a dying woman called Mary Fay who he wants to use to channel and communicate with the dead. He wants to let Mary die, partially revive her, and then use that opening between worlds to find out what in the hell happened to his wife and son. And his experiment works. However, it doesn't work quite in the way that Charles hoped. Mary becomes this doorway to the afterlife, and we learn that the afterlife is this hellish landscape called the Null. It's a dimension of chaos, where humans are tortured by giant ants and then fed to this hideous Lovecraftian being called Mother. Mother has a claw made of human faces. The message is clear: there is no hope, there is nothing good, there is nothing after death. And then, Mother decides to inhabit Mary Fay's body and try and take Charles and Jamie with her. Yeah, pretty wild. So Jamie manages to shoot Mother with Charles's gun, which forces her to scutter off back to the Null, but Jacobs has a fatal stroke and dies. Jamie ends up fleeing the scene and relocating to Hawaii, and then he starts tracking down all of Charles Jacobs's previous patients and discovers that they've either gone mad or killed themselves. It's a hella bleak ending to the book, particularly at the very end when Jamie is just reflecting on what he knows is waiting for him when his time comes. So there are a bunch of nods to other King works in this one, plenty of 19s, and also references of The Mellow Tiger, Derry's favourite bar, Jerusalem's Lot, and even a little place called Joyland. However, this book is not all gloom. There is one quote in particular that has always stood out for me and really made me feel nice and fuzzy inside. And I'll tell you what that quote is now. Home is where they want you to stay longer. Nice, isn't it? Hold on to that when you're faced with giant ants whipping you for eternity. So there we go, 19 reasons to read Revival. Let me know what you think of this dark book in the comments below. If you enjoyed that and you'd like more, there's plenty on the channel. Click around, see what you can find. And if you enjoy what you see, click subscribe and then you won't miss any videos in the future. And hey, check out some of my specials too. Did one very recently on King and music, which you might like. And if you want to come and chat King on Instagram, I'm at Dave Musson. Always happy to hear from you. Thanks as always for checking out my videos. Next up, we have another short story collection to jump into, so I'll see you for that.